So I worked on the hospital wing then. I mean, it was called the hospital wing. Really, it was the psychiatric wing. Love them. And which I've always enjoyed working with people with mental health, always. And so my helpers for that day were, one woman was in for arson and trying to murder a nurse. And the other one was in for, well, assisting the rape of her 2 children. She held their children down while her husband raped them. Now, a lot of people would think that she was worse than he was because they came from her. She born them. A woman's is nurture, nature, childbirth, and to do that to your own children. But I was given these 2 as helpers to go and fetch the lunch trolley. And I mean, I knew who they were. And when the one who'd abused her children had come in, we'd said to her, "Do not tell anybody what you are in for." We'd offered her the rule, which is segregation for her own protection. She didn't want it. So she was in the hospital wing. And the other one was all right until she felt that she wanted to try and attack you. So, you work with these people and you judge them on a almost a 5-minute basis as to, how they are. And anyways, I took them to the kitchen. And I was just talking to the caterer saying, I'm from C1, come to collect the lunch trolley. And all of a sudden, the woman who abused her children, just her face just slowly opened like this. And it was in slow motion, just literally the skin started to part. And it was 2 lines because the fire starter on the other side had melted 2 razor blades into a toothbrush, and that's quite common as a weapon to injure prisoners because two razor blades slices like that are much harder to stitch together, so you're always going to have a massive scar there. And then the next minute, this woman just started screaming and the claret started flowing and, it kind of went all over the baguettes and, it was a bit like, what was that? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, blood was spurting here, there and everywhere. And this one was trying to do a bit more with her. And it was just gone from very calm lunch to just mayhem, blood, everything. And of course, blood is very slippy. when you're on a lilo floor, you just trying to get your feet is impossible. But one was carted off to get stitched, and the other was carted off to the segregation unit. But things like that happen, and they can happen in the blink of an eye. 1 minute all is calm, the next minute it's complete carnage. What they've done is monstrous, absolutely. But actually, if you saw Rose West, and I looked after Rose West for 4 or 5 months while she was waiting her trial at Winchester Crown, she was at Holloway, down the seg unit, separated from the general population for obvious reasons. We used to think that she was like your auntie, that you go and see on a Sunday, who plumped the cushions up when you stood up, that sort of person. She used to knit a lot. She was yes, no, thank you, please, not a problem to manage. These people don't have, monster tattooed on their foreheads. It's the mainstream media that projects them as that. And, anybody that I've ever talked to who has dealt with the likes of Dennis Nielsen, the Yorkshire Ripper, Huntley, whatever, they're usually fairly compliant. They usually are no problem at all because they've been caught. I only met MYRA Hindley briefly. I only met her I was doing a transfer of prisoners with two other officers. We were taking half a dozen prisoners from Holloway down to Cookham Wood, and MYRA worked in the reception area of Cookham Wood. And I didn't know that. I mean, I'd only been in the job maybe a year, maybe a bit less. So I was the most junior officer there. And obviously the junior officer gets the shit job. So I was at the back of the van, right on the wheel hub. So you feel every single bump. But as is customary, when you go to another jail, you know, you're offered a cup of tea or whatever. And they offered me, the senior officer, reception officer offered us a drink. Would you like a drink? We all said yes. Out sort of come shuffling this little old lady. That's all I can describe her as. She had short brown mousy hair. She had an old brown cardigan on with the elbows bare and a denim skirt, and we used to call them jellies. They were made of plastic shoes. She come shuffling out, asked every single one of us what we wanted, and then went off. And the officer next to me, who was obviously senior to me, said to me, "You know who that was, don't you?" And I went, "No." And she said, "Well, that was MYRA Hindley." It's like, yeah, right. Because when I say MYRA Hindley, what do you think of? The blonde, the piercing eyes, the evil personified. You would honestly, you wouldn't have known her if you'd have walked past her in the street. And you know, she came back with her 3 mugs of tea and asked us if there was anything else, and off she went. I had no idea who she was, no idea. And obviously, you know, the hairs of the back of your neck stand up a bit because you know the story of the dreadful story of the Moors murderer. And I had a friend who came from Saddleworth, and she'll tell you even to this day, you know, that runs very deep. What happened and the fact that they've still not found all the children's bodies. I was at Wakefield Prison. I was going and having a look round there. Now, Wakefield Prison is known as Monster Mansion because it held the likes of Colin Ireland, Dennis Nielsen, the Yorkshire Ripper, the Black Panther, all of these like really serious serial killers. And I actually felt at one time that I loved Wakefield anyways. My nan was from Wakefield, and that I wanted to transfer up to Wakefield. So a friend of mine's father worked at Wakefield, and I asked her to ask him if he'd show me around, and he showed me around Wakefield Prison. And we were in the canteen, and I turned, well, sort of backed up one, and I literally bumped into somebody, and I said, "Oh, so," and then I just kept going up and up and up like that. And then there was this just 6'6" by 6'6" wide guy with these pink eyes, literally pink eyes. And I said to the guy that was taking me around, I said, "I've seen that face." And he went, "That's Colin Ireland." And yeah, I mean, he was a foreboding presence purely by his size. This one prisoner who we always thought had a very strange relationship with his mother, because like he would kiss his mother on the lips when she'd come to visit him, and she was very, what I would call, foreboding. You know, it was all about him and, you know, how is my little boy and things like that. It was a very odd relationship. Anyways, I was asked to write this report on him, and I knew that he was in for murder. He murdered his girlfriend. But what I didn't know, because you haven't got time to go into all the ins and outs of every person's offence. What I didn't know was the circumstances of his murder. Now, he claimed it was drug fueled. It may well have been. But basically, he and his girlfriend had taken a load of drugs, and watched porn, and then had this argument. He then raped her, and then he put a fist inside her, two fists. I'll leave it to your imagination as to where. Anyways, she started hemorrhaging. He went next door, or he phoned his mother, I think, because he didn't know what to do. Didn't call an ambulance. His mother then came round. They let this woman bleed to death. His mother actually was lucky not to get a prison sentence. And then I think eventually his mother called the ambulance, but by that time the girlfriend was dead. But it really just shocked me. I suppose maybe because I'm a female, maybe because I'd kind of got my head around rape and all the sort of sexual assault things, but I just thought, you know, for another woman to see the damage that her son had done and done nothing about it, and then try and cover it up, was it did give me kind of nightmares for a few months afterwards.